Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Kellen Royce hunched over the desk in his small office at the back of his welding shop. The clock on the wall read 11:42 p.m., but the numbers barely registered. Only the figures on the computer screen mattered now. He rubbed his calloused hands over his face, feeling the stubble that had grown throughout the day. QuickBooks didn't lie. After tonight's calculations, they had $46,732 saved for Briar's surgery. Not enough, but getting closer. 3 more months of 16-hour days, and they'd have the $60,000 needed for the procedure. His son's heart wouldn't wait much longer than that. The front door of his shop banged, open then closed. Monica was home. Late. Again. In here, he called, not looking up from the screen. Her perfume reached him before she did something new, something expensive, something they couldn't afford. Still counting pennies, Monica leaned against the doorframe. Her dark hair fell in waves over her shoulders, and her makeup looked freshly applied. Not the appearance of someone coming home from a 12-hour nursing shift. Making sure we have enough for Briar's pre-op next month. Kellen saved the spreadsheet and closed the laptop. You're home late. Picked up an extra shift. At the bar with Loretta. Monica rolled her eyes. Don't start, Kellen. I needed a drink after dealing with patients all day. Some of us don't get to hide away in a workshop. Hide away. The words hit like a sucker punch. I'm working 60 hours a week to save our son's life. And I'm suffocating. Monica's voice cracked. Every conversation is about money or Briar's condition or what doctor said what. I need air sometimes. Kellen stood, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. You think I don't? You think I enjoy watching our son struggle to breathe after walking up 3 steps? That's not what I meant. What did you mean, then? Monica stared at him, her eyes reflecting nothing he recognized anymore. I meant there's a whole world out there, and we're drowning in medical bills and worry. I'm 35, Kellen. When do I get to live? When our son's heart works properly. When we don't have to check his fingernails for blueness every morning. When I don't have to carry an AED everywhere we go. Kellen's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That's when, and if that never happens, what then? The question hung between them, a line Kellen refused to cross. It will happen. We'll make it happen. Monica's laugh held no humor. Always the Marine. Always the mission. What about what I need? What about what Briar needs? She turned away, fishing her phone from her purse. A text notification lit up the screen, and she quickly flipped it face down. I'm going to bed, she said, not meeting his eyes. Don't wake me when you come up. Kellen watched her leave, feeling the distance between them stretch into something vast and uncrossable. Once, they'd been a team, nurse and Marine, healer and protector, united in their love for each other and the miracle baby they'd been told they'd never have. Now they were strangers sharing a mortgage and a child's uncertain future. Kellen shut down the office and walked through the darkened workshop. His fingers trailed over a half-finished metal sculpture, a hummingbird, he was making for Briar's upcoming birthday. The kid loved watching the tiny birds at the feeder outside his window. Said they reminded him that small things could be strong too. Upstairs in their apartment over the shop, Kellen quietly opened Briar's door. The night light cast a soft glow over his son's sleeping form. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor provided the soundtrack to their lives, a constant reminder of borrowed time, that Briar's chest rose and fell unevenly. His small hand clutched his stuffed tiger, the one Jessa had given him last Christmas. Kellen resisted the urge to wake him, to hear his voice, to reassure himself that tonight wasn't the night they'd lose him. Instead, he gently adjusted the blanket and brushed the dark hair, so like Monica's, from his forehead. We'll get through this, buddy, he whispered. I promise. In their bedroom, Monica pretended to be asleep, her breathing too measured to be genuine. Kellen changed in the dark and slid under the covers, maintaining the invisible boundary that had formed between them. The last thing he saw before closing his eyes was the glow of Monica's phone as she checked it beneath the covers, her face illuminated by a message that made her smile, something he hadn't been able to make her do in months. The rusty nail was busier than usual for a Thursday night. Kellen wouldn't have been here at all if Jessa hadn't insisted on watching Briar, so he could attend the veterans fundraiser. He nursed his single beer at the bar, half listening to the band and making small talk with other former service members while keeping an eye on the time. He'd promised to be home by 9. Surprised to see you here, stranger. Kellen turned to find Loretta Flynn sliding onto the stool beside him. Monica's cousin had the same dark hair and sharp features, but where Monica's face once held warmth, Loretta's held only calculation. Just supporting the cause, he said, gesturing to the banner promoting the veterans fundraiser. Didn't know you worked here. 3 nights a week. Loretta signaled the bartender for a whiskey. Monica not with you? Home with Briar. The lie came easily. Monica had texted that she was working late the 3rd time this week, that Loretta's eyebrow arched. Funny. She was in here a couple hours ago. The bottle in Kellen's hand froze halfway to his lips. Must be a different nurse named Monica. Must be. Loretta's smile didn't reach her eyes. Unless there's another nurse with that little heart tattoo on her wrist who happens to be married to a welder named Kellen. Kellen set his beer down, feeling something cold slide into his stomach. She said she was working. She's working all right, Loretta said, leaning in, working on remembering what it feels like to be alive. She nodded toward the back corner of the bar. She and that guy have been meeting up a few times a week. He's got stories that make her laugh. When's the last time you made her laugh, Kellen? He followed her gaze to a booth partially hidden by the crowd. There sat Monica, her head thrown back in laughter, across from a man Kellen had never seen before. The stranger was tan, with carefully styled hair and an expensive watch that caught the light as he reached across the table to touch Monica's hand. Who is he? Kellen's voice sounded distant to his own ears. Remy something. Travels for a living. Posts pictures of beaches and mountains for his followers. Loretta knocked back her whiskey. He's showing her all the places she could go if she wasn't tied down. Kellen stood, but Loretta's hand on his arm stopped him. Don't make a scene, she warned. You'll only push her further away. She's my wife, and she's drowning in responsibility and guilt and medical bills. Loretta's voice hardened. Maybe if you'd paid attention to her needs instead of just your son's, she wouldn't be over there. Kellen jerked his arm free. Briar is dying without that surgery. What need could possibly matter more than that? Her need to feel like more than just a nurse and a mother to a sick kid. Loretta shrugged. You want my advice? Let her have this little escape. Better she flirts with some nobody than leaves altogether. But Kellen was already moving through the crowd. He reached the booth just as the man Remy was showing Monica something on his phone that made her eyes widen with delight. Paris in the spring is magical, Remy was saying. The light there changes everything. You'd look beautiful against that backdrop. Kellen. Monica's smile vanished, replaced by shock. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. Kellen's voice was steady despite the storm inside him. Thought you were working tonight. Remy extended his hand. You must be the husband. Remy called her. Your wife has been telling me all about your family. Kellen ignored the hand. Has she told you about our son's heart condition? Or were you too busy planning trips to Paris? Monica stood, gathering her purse. We should go home. Now. No. Kellen stepped back. You stay. Enjoy your escape. I need to get back to our son. Kellen, please. But he was already walking away, pushing through the crowd, desperate for air that didn't smell like betrayal. Outside, the night air hit his lungs like ice water. His phone buzzed with a text from Jessa. Briar asking for you. Fever's up a bit. Nothing serious, but thought you should know. Reality snapped back into focus. What was he doing wasting time in a bar while his son needed him? While their savings account waited for the final deposits that would secure the surgery. He drove home in silence, refusing to answer Monica's increasingly frantic texts. Let her worry for once. Let her feel the weight of responsibility she'd been so eager to shrug off. Jessa met him at the door to their apartment, her kind face creased with concern. He's okay. Just a small temperature spike. I gave him his medication. Thank you. Kellen's voice cracked as he hugged her. I shouldn't have gone out. Don't be ridiculous. You're allowed to have 2 hours to yourself. Jessa squeezed his arms. You're only human, Kellen. He found Briar propped up in bed with a book, his stuffed tiger tucked beside him. The boy's face lit up when Kellen entered. Dad, Did you see any other Marines? Kellen sat on the edge of the bed, reaching for Briar's wrist to check his pulse, a habit he couldn't break. A few. How are you feeling, bud? Better now. Miss Jessup let me have popsicles for my throat. Briar's eyes, so like Kellen's own, searched his face. Is Mom working late again? Yeah. The lie tasted bitter. She's helping people get better. Briar nodded sagely. Like I'm going to get better after my surgery, right? Right. Kellen smoothed the blanket. That's the plan. I heard you and Mom fighting about money again. Kellen's hands stilled. We weren't fighting, just talking. She said she wants to live. Briar's small face was serious. Doesn't she live here with us? Of course she does. She just meant. How could he explain concepts he barely understood himself? Adults sometimes need different things to feel happy. Like how you need your welding, and I need my tiger. Kellen smiled despite everything. Something like that. Now, time for sleep. Dr. Wells is coming tomorrow for your checkup. After Briar had drifted off, Kellen found Jessa in the kitchen washing the few dishes they'd used. You don't have to do that, he said, taking a clean dish towel to dry. I don't mind. She glanced at him. Want to talk about whatever's eating at you? Not particularly. Fair enough. Jessa handed him a plate. But if you change your mind, I'm a pretty good listener. Comes with being a kindergarten teacher. I appreciate that. Kellen set the plate in the cabinet. And everything else. I don't know what we'd do without you. You'd manage. You always do. She dried her hands and gathered her purse. Call me if you need anything. Anytime. After she left, Kellen sat alone in the dark kitchen. Monica's keys jangled in the lock an hour later. She entered cautiously, her eyes red-rimmed. Is Briar okay? You didn't answer my texts. He's fine. Small fever. Jessa handled it. Monica set her purse down. Kellen, about tonight. I don't want to hear it. He stood. I need to go over the books again. We're still short for the surgery. That's all you care about, isn't it? The money. The surgery. He turned on her then, anger finally breaking through. Yes, Monica. I care about keeping our son alive. What do you care about? Paris in spring. She flinched. That's not fair. No, it's not fair. You sitting in a bar flirting while I'm counting pennies to save her child. You lying about working when you're meeting some stranger. You acting like I'm the one keeping you from living when all I'm trying to do is keep our family from dying. Tears slid down Monica's cheeks. I'm suffocating here. Every day it's the same work, hospital, worry, repeat. I can't breathe anymore. And you think I can? Kellen's voice dropped to a ragged whisper. Every night, I lie awake listening to our son's heart monitor, terrified it'll stop. Every morning, I wake up wondering if today's the day we lose him. But I don't get to escape. I don't get to pretend none of this is happening. I'm not pretending. I just need. She trailed off. What? What do you need that's more important than Briar's life? Monica's eyes hardened. To remember that I exist outside of this tragedy. To feel something besides fear and guilt. To know that if the worst happens, there's still something left of me. The words hung between them, honest and brutal. Kellen couldn't process them, couldn't understand how she could even think beyond the single goal that consumed him. Go to bed, he said finally. I'll sleep on the couch. Kellen, just go. Please. She hesitated, then walked to their bedroom without another word. Kellen returned to his office, pulled up the bank account, and stared at the numbers that represented his son's chance at life. Tomorrow he would call the bank about his second mortgage. Tomorrow he would find a way to make up the difference. Tomorrow he would fix this like he fixed everything else. Little did he know, tomorrow would be too late. The call from a bank came at 2:17 p.m., while Kellen was in the middle of welding a custom gate for a client who'd prepaid money already earmarked for Briar's surgical fund. Mr. Royce, this is Sandra from First Portland Credit Union. I'm calling about the withdrawal from your savings account. Kellen set down his torch, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. What withdrawal? The wire transfer for $32,000 that was processed this morning. I wanted to confirm it was authorized since it's such a large amount. The room tilted. I didn't authorize any transfer. It was approved using your online banking credentials, sir. The funds were sent to a travel agency called Worldwide Escapes at 10:42 a.m. Kellen gripped the workbench. Lock the account. Now, no more withdrawals. Sir, if your wife made the transfer. Lock it. His voice came out harsh enough that his apprentice looked up in alarm from across the shop. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Kellen's drive to the bank passed in a blur. He called Monica 6 times straight to voicemail. He tried the hospital where she worked, only to be told she'd called in sick. By the time he reached the bank manager's office, a terrible clarity had settled over him. "The transfer was initiated from your home IP address," the manager explained, showing him the transaction record. "Using your joint account credentials. Can we reverse it? We've already tried." The funds were immediately transferred again to another account. "I'm afraid they're gone, Mr. Royce." Kellen drove home in a state of controlled fury. Their apartment was empty. Monica's side of the closet half cleared, her essential toiletries gone. On the kitchen counter sat her wedding ring and a note. "I can't do this anymore. He'll be fine. Kids heal fast. I need to live before it's too late. I'm sorry. 7 years of marriage. A child fighting for his life." And she'd reduced it all to 5 sentences in a discarded ring. Kellen crumpled the note in his fist. Briar would be home from school soon. Jessa always picked him up on Thursdays and brought him to the shop. What would he tell his son? How could he explain that his mother had stolen his future and run away? His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Monica sitting at an airport gate, her head resting on Remy's shoulder. The caption read, "Don't worry, she's in good hands now. Paris awaits." The message was from Loretta, he realized. Monica's own cousin was helping her escape. Kellen slammed his fist into the wall, leaving a dent in the drywall. Pain shot through his knuckles, but it was nothing compared to the agony in his chest. The surgery was in 3 weeks. Without that money, it wouldn't happen. Without the surgery, Briar's condition would continue to deteriorate until his heart simply couldn't keep up anymore. His phone rang the hospital. Dr. Wells wanted to confirm the pre-surgical payment would be made by next week. Kellen stared at the screen, unable to answer, unable to say the words that would sentence his son to an uncertain future. The front door opened, and Briar's excited voice called out, "Dad, Miss Jessa helped me make a card for Mom at school today. Where is she?" Kellen took a deep breath, wiped his face, and turned to face his son, whose innocent eyes had no idea their world had just collapsed. Behind Briar, Jessa stood in the doorway, her expression changing as she took in Kellen's face and the hole in the wall. She mouthed, "What happened?" But Kellen could only shake his head slightly. "Hey, buddy," he said, kneeling to Briar's level. "Mom's not here right now. Why don't you show me that card?" Briar proudly displayed a construction paper heart decorated with glitter and crayon. "It says best mom ever inside. Think she'll like it?" Kellen pulled his son into a hug, hiding his face in the boy's shoulder. "I think she would have loved it." Over Briar's head, his eyes met Jess's. Her hand went to her mouth as understanding dawned in her eyes. She nodded once, a silent promise of support that would soon become Kellen's only lifeline in the storm Monica had left behind. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" Briar asked, oblivious to the adult's silent communication. "Absolutely," Kellen managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "And how about we watch a movie after?" As Briar bounced off to his room to put away his backpack, Jessa approached Kellen, her voice barely above a whisper. "What did she do?" Kellen handed her the crumpled note. "Watch her read it." Saw the same horror and disbelief cross her face. "The surgery money." He nodded. 32,000. Gone. "That bitch," Jessa breathed, then immediately covered her mouth, glancing toward Briar's room. "Sorry. How could she?" "Paris," Kellen said flatly. "She went to Paris with some guy she met at a bar. A travel influencer." Jessa's hand found his arm, steadying him. "What can I do?" "I don't know yet. I need to figure out how to get the money back, or find it somewhere else. The surgery's in 3 weeks. We'll figure it out," Jessa promised. "The community will help. The church, the veterans group. I can't ask people for handouts." "It's not a handout when it's for a child's life, Kellen." Her voice was firm. "Put your pride aside. Briar needs you too." From Briar's room came the sound of coughing, the wet, labored cough that meant his heart was working too hard. Kellen closed his eyes briefly, then straightened his shoulders. "I need to call Dr. Wells back," he said. "Can you start dinner while I talk to him?" "Of course." Jessa squeezed his arm once more before heading to the kitchen. We'll get through this. Kellen wished he could believe her. But as he dialed the hospital, all he could see was the money disappearing from their account, and with it, his son's chance at life. Did Mom take the money from my heart? The question hung in the air between them. 3 days had passed since Monica left. 3 days of Kellen making excuses, of saying Mom had to take a trip for work, of pretending everything was normal while he scrambled to find a solution. Now at bedtime, Briar had finally asked the question Kellen had been dreading. Why would you think that? Kellen tucked the blanket around his son. Briar's small fingers fidgeted with his stuffed tiger. I heard you talking to Miss Jessa. You said the money was gone. And Mama's gone too. Kellen sat heavily on the edge of the bed. How much truth could a 7-year-old handle? How much pain should he shelter him from? Mom needed to go away for a while, he said carefully. And yes, some of the money for your surgery is temporarily unavailable. But why would she take it? Doesn't she want my heart to work better? The innocent confusion in Briar's eyes tore at Kellen's chest. He pulled his son into a hug, partly to comfort him, partly to hide his own expression. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, he said into Briar's hair. Big mistakes. But that doesn't mean they don't love you. Even as he said the words, Kellen wondered if they were true. What kind of love could justify stealing from your dying child? Is that why you punched the wall? Briar asked, pulling back to look at Kellen's bandaged hand. Yeah, buddy. I was angry, but I shouldn't have done that. It didn't solve anything. Will I still get my surgery? The question Kellen had been turning over in his mind for 3 sleepless nights. The surgery that would repair the hole in Briar's heart and strengthen the weakened valves. The procedure that stood between his son and an increasingly limited future. Yes, he promised, with more certainty than he felt. I'm working on it. And will Mom come back after? Kellen's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice gentle. I don't know, bud, but you and me were going to be okay either way. Royce men are tough, remember? Briar nodded solemnly. Like the hummingbirds. Small but strong. Exactly. Kellen kissed his forehead. Now get some sleep. We need to see Dr. Wells tomorrow. After Briar had fallen asleep, Kellen sat at the kitchen table with spreadsheets, loan applications, and a growing pile of rejection letters. The bank wouldn't extend another loan against the business. His credit card were maxed from previous medical bills. The few relatives he had weren't in a position to help. His phone buzzed with a text from Jessa. Pastor Will wants to meet with you tomorrow. Says he might have some ideas. Kellen hadn't set foot in a church since Briar was baptized. Religion wasn't his thing, not after what he'd seen in combat. Not after praying hadn't saved his parents from a drunk driver, and certainly not after his wife had abandoned their family. But desperation made believers of even the most skeptical. He texted back, "What time?" The next morning, Dr. Wells confirmed what Kellen already knew without the surgery. Briar's condition would continue to deteriorate. The medication was helping, but not enough. His heart couldn't keep up with his growing body. We can postpone a few weeks if necessary, Dr. Wells said, but not much longer than that. His last echo showed significant strain. What about payment plans? Kellen asked for the 3rd time. I can put up the business as collateral. Dr. Wells shook his head. I'm sorry, Kellen. Hospital policy requires the payment up front for this type of procedure. The equipment alone costs. I know what it costs. Kellen's voice was tight. Just give me a little more time. I'll figure something out. Dr. Wells placed a hand on his shoulder. There are charitable organizations that might help. Let my office put you in touch with our financial counselor. On the drive to Pastor Will's church, Briar dozed in the back seat, exhausted from the morning's tests. Kellen glanced at him in the rearview mirror, noting the bluish tint to his lips that appeared whenever he was tired. Time was running out. Pastor Will met them in his office, a modest room with books lining the walls and children's drawings pinned to a bulletin board. He greeted Briar warmly, offering him crayons and paper at a small table in the corner. Jessa told me what happened, he said to Kellen, once Briar was occupied. I'm truly sorry. Sorry doesn't pay for heart surgery, Kellen replied, then immediately regretted his tone. I apologize. I haven't been sleeping much. Understandable. Pastor Will leaned forward. Kellen, I know you've never been comfortable with church charity. I'm not here for a handout. No, you're here for your son. The pastor's voice was firm but kind. And sometimes being a good father means accepting help when it's offered. Kellen stared at his hands. What kind of help are we talking about? The church has an emergency fund. It won't cover everything, but it might make a dent. And if you'll allow it, I'd like to share your story anonymously, of course, with the congregation. Many of them have known Breyer since he was born. They want to help. Pride warred with necessity in Kellen's chest. I've always paid my own way, and now you're paying for someone else's selfishness, Pastor Will said bluntly. That's not fair to you or to Breyer. The truth of the words hit Kellen hard. He glanced at his son, happily drawing at the table, unaware that his future hung in the balance of this conversation. Okay, he said finally, but I want to work for it somehow. Extra maintenance around the church, anything. Pastor Will smiled. The roof does need fixing. For the first time in days, a small weight lifted from Kellen's shoulders. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was a start. As they were leaving, Breyer handed Pastor Will his drawing. It's our family, he explained. Kellen looked over his shoulder. The crayon picture showed 3 figures tall, one labeled Dad, a small one labeled me, and a third figure standing apart from the others, labeled Mom in Paris. Pastor Will's eyes met Kellen's over Breyer's head. It's a beautiful drawing, he told the boy. Thank you for sharing it with me. In the car, Kellen asked, How did you know Mom is in Paris? Breyer buckled his seatbelt. I heard Miss Jessa talking on the phone. She said Mom took our money to go to Paris with a strange man. He looked up, his eyes too serious for a 7-year-old. Is Paris nice, Dad? Kellen gripped the steering wheel. I've never been. If Mom likes it there, it must be nice, Breyer reasoned. Maybe we can visit her someday, when my heart is better. Kellen started the car, unable to answer, unable to crush his son's hope with the reality that his mother had chosen Paris over his life. 2 weeks after Monica left, Kellen stood before the hospital's financial office, a folder of documents clutched in his hand. The surgery was now 8 days away, and he was still $18,000 short. I'm sorry, Mr. Royce, the financial counselor said, reviewing his application. You've already been granted the maximum assistance our program allows. Without the remaining balance, we'll have to postpone the procedure. Postpone until when? Kellen asked, though he already knew the answer. Until the financial obligation is met. She gave him a sympathetic look. Have you considered a medical fundraising site? Many families in your situation have success with them. Outside in the parking lot, Kellen called the one person who always answered. They won't budge, he told Jessa. I'm still $18,000 short. What about selling the truck? Jessa suggested. Or some of your equipment? Already listed both online. That might get us another 10, if I'm lucky. Kellen leaned against his truck, watching rain begin to fall. I could sell the shop building, but that would take weeks to close. What about Monica's parents? Have you called them? They're as broke as we are, and her sister already made it clear whose side she's on. Kellen had received a scathing email from Monica's sister, accusing him of driving Monica away with his obsessive focus on Breyer's condition. Pastor Will's sermon yesterday raised almost $3,000, Jessa offered, and the online fundraiser is up to about $2,000. It's gaining traction. It wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. Kellen had already sold his motorcycle, pawned his grandfather's watch, canceled every subscription, and picked up weekend welding jobs. He'd applied for every financial assistance program available. He'd swallowed his pride and accepted charity. And still, it wasn't enough. I'll figure something out, he said, not believing it himself. Thanks for picking up Breyer from school today. I need to go by the pawn shop and see what else I can sell. That night, after Breyer was asleep, Kellen sat amid the ruins of his pride. The pawn shop had given him $600 for Monica's jewelry, the pieces she'd left behind, including her engagement ring. He'd sold some of his tools and accepted a cash advance from a client. All told, he'd scraped together another $2,800 today, still more than $12,000 short. With 6 days to go, his phone lit up with a text from a number with a French country code. Having the most amazing time. The Eiffel Tower is even more beautiful than in pictures. Hope everything's good with B. Rage surged through Kellen. After 2 weeks of silence, that's all she had to say. He typed back, surgery's been postponed. We're $12,000 short because of you. Hope Paris is worth our son's life. He hit send before he could think better of it. Almost immediately, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came, but a knock on the door startled him. It was nearly midnight. Who would be visiting at this hour? He opened the door to find Jessa, a large envelope in her hands and determination on her face. "I have an idea," she said, stepping inside. "And before you say no, just hear me out." She spread papers across the kitchen table, printouts about medical tourism, information about a cardiac surgeon in Mexico who performed the same procedure for a fraction of the cost, testimonials from parents who had taken their children there. "It's still expensive, but nothing like what they want here," she explained. "And they don't require payment up front, just a deposit." Kellen studied the papers. "How do we know it's legitimate?" "That this doctor is qualified. He trained at Johns Hopkins. And I spoke with 2 families who went to him last year. Both kids are doing great now." Hope flickered for the first time in days. "Even if this works, how'll we get there? When? That's the other part." Jessa shifted uncomfortably. "I have savings. About $20,000. It's for a down payment on a house, but—" She met his eyes. "Briar needs it more than I need a house." Kellen stared at her, speechless. "Jessa, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." She reached across the table and gripped his hand. "Let me help, Kellen. Please." The weight of what she was offering crashed over him. This wasn't a small charity donation or a casserole dropped off to help during a rough time. This was her future she was putting on hold for his son. "I'll pay you back," he promised. "Every penny. I know you will." She smiled. "But that's not why I'm doing it." "Why are you doing it?" Her eyes softened. "Because Briar deserves a chance. Because you're both family to me. Because it's the right thing to do." Kellen felt something crack inside him, the hard shell of self-reliance that had kept him functioning since Monica left. A single tear escaped before he could stop it. "Thank you," he whispered, the words entirely inadequate. "Don't thank me yet," Jessa said, squeezing his hand. "We still have a lot of details to work out, but we'll do it together." For the first time in 2 weeks, Kellen slept through the night. The church was empty except for Kellen and Pastor Will. Early morning light filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the worn pews. Kellen sat in the last row, head bowed, not in prayer, but in exhaustion. "I haven't seen you here this early since, well, ever," Pastor Will said, sitting beside him. "Couldn't sleep." Kellen rubbed his face. "The doctor in Mexico wants medical records Briar's cardiologist won't release without a formal referral. The airline needs a doctor's note clearing Briar for travel. The hotel near the hospital wants a deposit." Pastor Will nodded. "Obstacles. More like signs that this is a terrible idea." Kellen's voice cracked. "What kind of father takes his sick child to another country for cut-rate surgery? What if something goes wrong? What if it goes right?" Kellen looked up. "What? What if it goes right?" Pastor Will repeated. "What if this doctor is exactly who Briar needs? What if this is the path that was meant for you? I don't believe in meant to be. Not anymore. Then believe in yourself." The pastor's voice was firm. "You've moved mountains to get this far. You'll move a few more to get the rest of the way." Kellen shook his head. "I'm out of mountains to move. Jess's savings will cover the surgery and travel, but barely. If there are complications, if we need to stay longer." He trailed off. "I've sold everything worth selling. I'm working every hour I'm not with Briar. I've accepted charity from people who can barely afford to give it. And it still might not be enough." "You're afraid," Pastor Will observed. "Of course I'm afraid. My son could die because his mother stole his future and ran off to Paris." Kellen's voice echoed in the empty church. "I'm terrified every single day. Yet you get up every morning and fight for him. That's courage, Kellen. That's faith." "Faith in what? God? Where was God when Monica emptied our account? Where was he when Briar was born with half a working heart?" Pastor Will didn't flinch at the anger. "Right where he is now, beside you, working through people like Jessa, like the congregation members who've donated, like the doctor in Mexico who's willing to help." Kellen laughed bitterly. "So God works through people, but not through bank accounts or heart valves. Sometimes the path we're given isn't the one we'd choose." Pastor Will placed a hand on Kellen's shoulder. "But that doesn't mean we walk it alone. I feel alone. The admission cost Kellen what little pride he had left. I feel like I'm failing him. You haven't failed until you stop trying. Pastor Will stood, and I don't see you stopping anytime soon. I'm so angry, Kellen whispered. At Monica, at myself for not seeing it coming. At the world for being so damned unfair to an innocent kid. Anger is fuel, Pastor Will said. Use it to keep going, not to burn yourself down. Kellen looked up at the cross hanging above the altar. He couldn't believe in a God who would let his child suffer while his wife danced through Paris. But maybe the pastor was right about one thing. Maybe he didn't have to do this alone. I don't know how to accept help, he admitted. I've always been the one people count on, not the other way around. And it's time to learn. Pastor Will smiled. You survive by standing, Kellen, not by begging. But sometimes, standing means letting others help hold you up. The words sank in, simple yet profound. Kellen had been so focused on doing everything himself, on being both parents, on making up for Monica's absence, that he'd forgotten he wasn't meant to carry this burden alone. The GoFundMe Jessa set up hit $5,000 last night, Pastor Will added, and the church council voted to match it. Kellen's head snapped up. 10,000? Just like that. Just like that. Pastor Will smiled. People want to help Kellen. Let them. For the first time in weeks, Kellen felt something other than rage and fear. Something that might, with time, grow into hope. Kellen received the postcard on a Tuesday. A glossy image of the Eiffel Tower. The words, "Wish you were here," printed in fancy script. On the back, Monica's handwriting. Everything's beautiful here. The food, the architecture, the people. Remy knows everyone. We're staying in a little apartment in Montmartre. I'm finally breathing again. Tell me I love him. In no mention of the money she'd stolen. No question about Briar's surgery or health. Just a tourist's superficial observations about a city built on other people's money. Kellen tore the postcard in half and threw it in the trash. In 3 days, he and Briar would fly to Mexico for the surgery. Thanks to the church donations, Jess's savings, and his own relentless work, they had enough for the procedure and 2 weeks of recovery time in a modest hotel near the hospital. If all went well, Briar would return with a repaired heart and a chance at a normal childhood. But if all went well, that night, after Briar was asleep, Kellen allowed himself a rare moment of weakness. He opened his laptop and typed Monica Royce Paris into the search bar. Remy Calder's Instagram account appeared immediately. There she was, Monica, his wife, the mother of his child, posing beneath the Eiffel Tower, sipping wine at sidewalk cafes, laughing on the steps of Sacré-Cœur. In every photo, she looked happier than he'd seen her in years. Carefree, young, alive, stolen moments, bought with stolen money. Happiness purchased with their son's future. He clicked through the photos, torturing himself with each one. Monica at museums, at restaurants, at nightclubs. Always smiling. Always without the worry lines that had marked her face at home. Always without the son who asked for her every night before bed. Then he saw a photo posted just hours ago. Monica alone at a cafe table. Her expression no longer carefree. The caption read, "Sometimes paradise isn't what it seems." Hashtag truth hurts. Hashtag trust your instincts. Had the fantasy begun to crack? Had Remy shown his true colors? Kellen found he didn't care anymore. Whatever was happening in Paris, it was too little, too late. The money was gone. The damage was done. He closed the laptop and went to check on Briar, who slept peacefully, his stuffed tiger clutched to his chest. Kellen touched his son's forehead. No fever tonight. A good sign before their long journey. "We're going to be okay, buddy," he whispered. "You and me against the world." 3 days later, as they boarded the flight to Mexico, Kellen's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Need money. Things went bad. Can you wire $500? We'll explain everything. Please." Kellen turned off his phone without responding and took his son's hand. Whatever storm was brewing in Paris, it wasn't as to weather anymore. 5 weeks after Monica left, Kellen pulled into the driveway of their apartment above the welding shop, Briar dozing in the back seat. The surgery in Mexico had been successful, better than successful, according to the cardiac surgeon who'd performed it. Briar's color was better, his energy improving daily. For the first time in years, Kellen dared to imagine a future where his son could run and play without his lips turning blue. Something was wrong. A figure sat on the steps leading up to their apartment, a woman with dark hair, shoulders hunched, a suitcase at her feet. Monica, Kellen's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Of all the times for her to return, she'd chosen the exact moment they weren't there. The exact moment they were fighting to fix what she'd broken, that he parked but didn't get out immediately. In the rearview mirror, he could see Briar beginning to stir, blinking sleepily. "Are we home, Dad?" "Yeah, buddy. We're home." Kellen turned in his seat. "Listen, there's someone outside. I need you to stay in the car for a minute while I talk to them." "Okay." Briar craned his neck to see, then his eyes widened. "Mom? Mom's home." The hope in his voice cut through Kellen like a knife. Despite everything, the abandonment, the stolen money, the weeks of silence, Briar still lit up at the sight of his mother. "Wait here," Kellen repeated, more firmly this time. "Please." He stepped out of the truck, and Monica rose to her feet. She looked diminished somehow, thinner, her expensive clothes wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The carefree woman from the Instagram photos was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Kellen," she began, taking a step toward him. "I've been trying to call you for days. We were out of the country." His voice was flat. "For Briar's surgery." Her eyes widened. "You still did it? How?" "No thanks to you." He moved past her to unlock the apartment door. "What are you doing here, Monica?" She glanced at the truck, where Briar watched through the window. "Can we talk inside, please? I can explain everything." "There's nothing to explain. You stole from our son and ran away with another man. The end." "It wasn't like that." Her voice cracked. "Remy, he convinced me we'd double the money through investments, that we'd come back with enough for Briar's surgery and more." Kellen turned to face her, incredulous. "And you believe that? A man you met in a bar promised to double your money, and you handed over our son's surgery fund without question." "I was stupid," she admitted, tears forming. "So stupid. I thought I don't know what I thought. That I could have an adventure and fix everything at the same time." "Where's Remy now?" Monica looked away. "Gone. He took my passport, my credit cards, most of the cash. Left me stranded in Paris." "So you came back because you had nowhere else to go." Kellen's voice was cold. "Not because you missed your son. Not because you regretted what you did. But because your fantasy fell apart." "That's not true," she protested. "I miss Briar every day. I missed you. Save it." Kellen looked back at the truck, where Briar was becoming increasingly agitated. "You can stay here tonight. I'll take Briar to Jess's. But tomorrow, you need to find somewhere else to go. This is my home too. Not anymore." Kellen's voice was final. "Not after what you did." "Dad!" Briar called from the truck, unable to contain himself any longer. "Can I come out now? I want to see Mom." Kellen closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. Briar scrambled out of the truck and ran toward them, his movements already more fluid and less labored than before the surgery. "Mom!" he cried, throwing himself at Monica. "You're back. Did you see the Eiffel Tower? Did you bring me something?" Monica knelt to hug him, tears streaming down her face. "I missed you so much," she whispered. So much." Over Briar's head, her eyes met Kellen's, pleading, desperate. He looked away. "Briar, go inside and get your backpack," he said. "We're going to stay at Miss Jess's tonight." "But Mom just got home," Briar protested. "I want to stay with her." "Briar." Kellen's voice brooked no argument. "Go get your backpack. Now." Reluctantly, Briar went inside, leaving them alone again. "Kellen, please," Monica began. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but I want to make it right. I'll do anything. Can you give back the weeks of terror I felt, not knowing if our son would live or die? Can you return the money you stole? Can you undo the moment when our 7-year-old asked me if his mother took the money for his heart?" Kellen's voice was low but intense. "Because unless you can do those things, there's nothing to talk about." He asked that. Monica's face crumpled. "Oh God, get cleaned up before he comes back out," Kellen advised coldly. "He doesn't need to see you like this." When Briar returned with his backpack, Monica had wiped her tears and plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'll see you soon, okay?" she told Briar, hugging him again. "I promise." "Tomorrow?" Briar asked hopefully, Monica glanced at Kellen, who gave a slight nod. For Briar's sake, he wouldn't deny her visits. But that was all she would get. Tomorrow, she confirmed. I'll come see you at Miss Jess's. As they drove away, Briar waved frantically out the window. In the rearview mirror, Kellen could see Monica standing alone on the steps, the door closed behind her, nowhere left to go. He felt no satisfaction in her misery. Only a profound weariness and the certainty that she would never understand the depth of her betrayal. Paris hadn't been heaven, but their home was no longer hers. So she just showed up. Jessa set a mug of coffee in front of Kellen at her kitchen table. No warning, no call, nothing. Apparently, she's been trying to reach me while we were in Mexico. Kellen wrapped his hands around the mug, feeling the warmth seep into his perpetually cold fingers. Her boyfriend took off with everything: money, passport, the works. Karmic justice, Jessa muttered, then glanced toward the guest room where Briar was sleeping. What are you going to do? I don't know. Kellen stared into his coffee. Legally, she has as much right to the apartment as I do. Her name's on the lease, the business paperwork, everything. After what she did, there has to be some recourse. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week. But for now, he sighed. For now, I need to focus on Briar. The doctor said the first month after surgery is critical. He needs stability, rest, regular medication. He needs his mother. Jessa said quietly that Kellen's head snapped up. She abandoned him, stole from him, left him to— I know what she did, Jessa interrupted, and I'm not defending her. But Briar loves her. He's been asking for her every day since she left. So I'm supposed to forgive her? Pretend nothing happened? Welcome her back with open arms? No, but for Briar's sake, you need to figure out a way forward that doesn't tear him in two. Kellen knew she was right. Despite his anger, the rage that still burned like acid in his chest, he couldn't deny Briar a relationship with his mother. Even if that mother had proven herself unworthy of the title. His phone buzzed with a notification. Pastor Will had shared their fundraising page again, this time with a brief update about Briar's successful surgery. The comments section was flooded with well wishes and continued donations, people celebrating Briar's recovery and offering support for the long road ahead. The GoFundMe passed 20,000, Kellen said, showing Jessa the screen. Even though the surgery's already done, people want to help. Jessa smiled, and they know medical bills don't stop after the procedure. The total was enough to repay Jessa her savings and cover Briar's post-operative care. Enough to rebuild what Monica had torn down. All thanks to a community Kellen had never fully embraced until now. I don't know how to thank everyone, he admitted. This doesn't come naturally to me. Just keep doing what you're doing, being the father Briar needs. Jessa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. The rest will work itself out. Kellen wasn't so sure. Not with Monica back, complicating everything. Not with Briar's fragile heart still healing. Not with the business barely hanging on after weeks of neglect. But for the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd make it through. The next morning, Kellen took Briar to his follow-up appointment with their regular cardiologist. Dr. Morris reviewed the surgical notes from Mexico with undisguised surprise. This is impressive work, he admitted. Better than I expected, honestly. So he's going to be okay? Kellen asked the question that had consumed him for 7 years. Doctor Morris smiled at Briar, who was playing with a toy stethoscope on the examination table. Barring any complications, I'd say his prognosis is excellent. He'll need annual checkups, of course, and we'll monitor his development closely. But this repair should last him well into adulthood. The relief that flooded Kellen was so intense he had to grip the edge of his chair to stay upright. Briar would live. He would grow. He would have a future. What about activity restrictions? He asked, once he could trust his voice. Let's take it slow for the first few months. No contact sports just yet. But by summer, he should be able to do most of the things other kids his age can do. Dr. Morris patted Briar's shoulder. Maybe even swimming lessons, if you'd like that. Briar's eyes widened. Really? The kids at school all know how to swim already. Really? Dr. Morris confirmed. You're going to be just fine, young man. On the drive back to Jess's, Briar chattered excitedly about swimming and soccer and all the things he'd never been allowed to try. Kellen listened, his heart full, his mind already planning the future they'd fought so hard to secure, that a future that now included Monica, whether he wanted it to or not. She was waiting at Jess's house when they arrived, sitting awkwardly on the front porch. She'd cleaned up since yesterday, hair neatly styled, wearing clothes Kellen recognized from their closet at home. Briar ran to her immediately, showing her the sticker Dr. Morris had given him. "Look, I get to learn swimming this summer." Monica hugged him tightly, her eyes meeting Kellen's over their son's head. "That's wonderful, sweetie. I'm so happy for you." Kellen nodded briefly to her, then turned to Jessa, who'd come out to the porch. "Good news from the doctor. Briar's heart is doing great." "Of course it is." Jessa smiled. "He's a fighter like his dad." The look of pain that crossed Monica's face at this casual exchange didn't escape Kellen's notice. She was an outsider now, watching the family unit function without her Kellen, Briar, and Jessa, a makeshift team that had formed in her absence. "Can I talk to you?" Monica asked Kellen. Privately, he hesitated, then nodded. "Briar, why don't you show Miss Jessie your new sticker? We'll be right back." They walked to the edge of Jess's small yard, far enough away that Briar couldn't hear them. "I've been to the bank," Monica began. "They froze the joint account when you reported the unauthorized withdrawal, but I still have my personal account. There's not much in it, but I've withdrawn everything. It's a start toward paying you back." She handed him an envelope. Inside was less than $2,000, a pitiful fraction of what she'd taken. "The surgery's already paid for," Kellen said, making no move to take the money. "Thanks to people who actually care about Briar." Monica flinched but persisted. "Then use it for his recovery, or for anything he needs. Please, Kellen, I need to do something to make this right." "There is no making this right." His voice was quiet but firm. "What you did can't be undone with a couple $1,000s. Then tell me what I can do." Desperation edged her words. "I know I messed up worse than messed up. I did something unforgivable. But he's still my son, and I still—" She stopped, then continued in a smaller voice. "I still love him. And you." Kellen laughed without humor. "Love? Is that what you call stealing from your dying child? Abandoning your family for some fantasy vacation?" "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was drowning, Kellen. Every day, watching him struggle, knowing it might never get better. The constant fear. The medical bills. I just broke." "We were all drowning," Kellen countered. "But the rest of us didn't grab the life raft and leave everyone else to sink." "I know." Tears spilled down Monica's cheeks. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But please, don't keep me for Briar. I'll do anything, therapy, community service, whatever you want. Just don't cut me out of his life." Kellen looked back at the porch, where Briar was showing Jessa something on his iPad, his small face animated with excitement. For the first time since his diagnosis at age 3, he looked like a normal kid with a normal future. "You can see him," Kellen decided. "Supervised visits for now, but you're not moving back in. You're not part of our daily life anymore. You lost that right when you chose Paris over your family." Relief and pain warred on Monica's face. "What about us? Is there any chance?" "No." The word was final. "There is no us, Monica. Not anymore." She nodded, accepting the verdict. "Can I see him again tomorrow? I promised I'd bring him something from Paris." "Fine. Come by around noon." Kellen turned to go, then stopped. "And Monica? If you ever hurt him again, if you make a promise you don't keep, if you disappear without warning, you won't get another chance." "Understand. I understand." She clutched the envelope of money to her chest. "I won't let him down again. Either of you." Kellen didn't bother to correct her. She had already let him down beyond redemption. Briar might forgive her, might welcome her back with the unconditional love only a child could offer. But Kellen would never trust her again, never rely on her, never see her as anything but the woman who'd been willing to sacrifice their son for a Parisian fantasy. That night, after Briar was asleep, Jessa found Kellen on her back porch, staring at the stars. "You okay?" she asked, joining him on the steps. Getting there, he glanced at her. "Thanks for letting us crash here. We should be able to move back to the apartment in a few days. Monica found a place with Loretta. You're welcome here as long as you need." Jessa pulled her sweater tighter against the evening chill. "Both of you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only comes with true friendship. The GoFundMe is still going, Jessa said eventually. Pastor Will thinks it might reach 30,000 by the end of the week. That's incredible. Kellen shook his head in wonder. I never expected. I know you didn't. That's why people want to help. She bumped his shoulder gently with hers. You'd do the same for any of them. He realized. After this experience, he'd never again hesitate to help someone in need, never judge someone for accepting assistance. Pride was a luxury for those who'd never faced losing everything. Briar's going to be okay, Jessa said softly. You both are. Kellen looked at her, this woman who'd been his friend since childhood, who'd stood by him when everyone else had faltered, who'd offered her life savings without hesitation to save his son. In her steady presence, he found a peace he hadn't felt in years. Yes, he agreed, believing it for the first time. We are. 2 months after Briar's surgery, life had settled into a new rhythm. Kellen had reopened the welding shop, working reduced hours so he could be home when Briar returned from school. Briar's health improved daily. His lips no longer turned blue with exertion. He could climb the stairs without stopping to rest, and he'd even joined a non-competitive swim class at the community center. Monica visited 3 times a week, always under Jess's watchful eye. She brought small gifts, helped Briar with homework, and kept her promises about when she would come and go. On the surface, things were cordial for Briar's sake. Kellen maintained a polite distance, and Monica accepted the boundaries he'd set. Beneath the surface, however, tension simmered. Monica had made no secret of her desire to rebuild their family. Each visit included subtle hints about her improved therapist-recommended mindfulness and responsibility. She'd found a nursing position at a different hospital and rented an apartment just 10 minutes from them. Everything in her life now revolved around proving she could be trusted again. Kellen wasn't buying it. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, he was helping Briar with science homework when someone knocked on the apartment door. Not Monica's usual soft tap, but a firm, insistent pounding. I'll get it, he told Briar, setting down the textbook. Loretta Flynn stood on the landing, rain dripping from her leather jacket, her expression a mix of defiance and desperation. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? Kellen made no move to invite her in. About Monica. She's a mess, Kellen. She cries herself to sleep every night. She's trying so hard, and you won't give an inch. Not my problem. Loretta pushed past him into the apartment. It is your problem when your son asks why his mommy can't live with him anymore. When she's doing everything right and you're still punishing her. Aunt Loretta. Briar called from the kitchen table, his face lighting up. Hey, kiddo. Loretta's demeanor changed instantly, softening as she crossed to hug him. How's that new heart treating you? Great. I can swim a whole lap now without stopping. That's amazing. She ruffled his hair, then turned back to Kellen. See? Everything's getting better. Everything except your attitude. Kellen's jaw tightened. Briar, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Aunt Loretta and I need to talk. Once Briar was out of earshot, Kellen faced Loretta squarely. You have a lot of nerve coming here. You help her leave. You encourage the whole thing. I didn't know she was taking the surgery money, Loretta protested. I thought she just needed a break a week away to clear her head. I never thought she'd abandon her family, steal from her son. Kellen's voice was dangerously quiet. Well, she did, and you helped her, and now I'm trying to help fix it. Loretta leaned against the counter. She's different now, Kellen. What happened in Paris changed her. Remy cleaned her out, left her stranded in a foreign country where she barely spoke the language. She had to beg strangers for help, sleep in a train station until I could wire her money for a ticket home. Sounds traumatic, Kellen said without sympathy. Almost as traumatic as telling your child his mother abandoned him and stole the money that was supposed to save his life. Loretta flinched. She knows she messed up, monumentally. But people deserve second chances. Some people, not all. You self-righteous ass. Loretta's voice rose. You act like you've never made a mistake in your life. Like you're some perfect father who never. I've made plenty of mistakes, Kellen interrupted. But I never abandoned my child. I never stole from him. I never chose myself over his life. No, you just chose his medical condition over everything else. Over your marriage, over Monica's needs, over any semblance of a normal life. Loretta's eyes flashed. You were so focused on saving him that you forgot to keep the rest of your family alive. The accusation hit harder than Kellen wanted to admit. Had he been so consumed with Briar's health that he'd failed to see Monica drowning? Had his single-minded focus on the surgery pushed her toward the escape Remy offered? No. He refused to accept that narrative. Plenty of parents had chronically ill children without stealing and abandoning them. Get out, he said simply. Whatever you came here to accomplish, it's not happening. She loves him, Kellen. And despite everything, she still loves you too. Love isn't enough. Trust is essential. Respect is essential. Reliability is essential. Kellen moved to the door and held it open. She destroyed all of those. Now leave before I say something I'll regret in front of my son. Loretta grabbed her purse, but paused at the door. She's filing for partial custody. Just so you know, she doesn't want to, but you're not giving her a choice. The words landed like a physical blow. She wants to take him from me now. She wants to be his mother again. Fully, not just during supervised visits. Loretta's voice softened. He needs both of you, Kellen. Think about what's best for him, not what feels right to your wounded pride. After she left, Kellen stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, breathing deeply to control the rage and fear coursing through him. Custody proceedings. Courts. Lawyers. Money they didn't have to spare, even with the generous donations that had saved Briar's life. Dad. Briar appeared in the doorway, concern on his small face. Are you mad at Aunt Loretta? Kellen forced a smile. No, buddy. Just a grown-up disagreement. Nothing for you to worry about. Was it about Mom? Briar was too perceptive for his own good. Sort of. Kellen knelt to his son's level. Hey, can I ask you something? And I want you to be really honest, okay? Briar nodded solemnly. Are you happy with how things are now? With Mom visiting a few times a week, but living somewhere else? Briar considered this with a seriousness beyond his years. I wish she lived with us again, he admitted. But I like that she's not sad anymore. And you're not as angry as before. I was angry all the time. Briar's direct gaze was unflinching, even before Mom left. You were always worried and mad about money and doctors and stuff. The observation stung with its accuracy. Before the surgery, Kellen had lived in a constant state of low-grade panic counting dollars, researching treatments, working endless hours to save for a procedure that might never happen. He'd been so focused on keeping Briar alive that he'd forgotten to help him live. And now he asked, Am I still angry? Briar shook his head. Now you smile more. You play with me. You're teaching me to weld little stuff. Relief washed over Kellen. At least in this, he hadn't failed. Dad, Briar asked, do you still love Mom? The question Kellen had been avoiding for months. Did he still love Monica? The woman who'd shared his bed, given birth to his son, stood beside him through years of medical crises? Or had that Monica died the day she chose Paris over their family? I'll always care about your mom, he said carefully. She gave me you, and that's the best gift anyone's ever given me. It wasn't really an answer, but it seemed to satisfy Briar, who nodded and returned to his homework. That night, after Briar was asleep, Kellen called Jessa. Monica's filing for partial custody, he said without preamble. Loretta came by to warn me or threaten me. I'm not sure which. Could she do that? After what she did? I don't know. I need a lawyer. Kellen ran a hand through his hair. I can't lose him, Jessa. I can't. You won't. Her voice was firm. No judge would give custody to someone who abandoned their child and stole from them. They might if I can't prove it. The bank records show a transfer she could claim I approved. It's her word against mine. Then we'll find proof. Jessa's determination came through the phone. And you're not alone in this, Kellen. Remember that. After they hung up, Kellen sat at his desk, staring at the folder of medical bills and bank statements he'd been organizing. Evidence of Monica's betrayal scattered among evidence of Briar's recovery. Bitterness and joy intertwined that he opened his laptop and began searching for family law attorneys. Whatever came next, he would be prepared. Monica had taken enough from them. She wouldn't take Briar too. The letter from Monica's attorney arrived 3 days later formal, In personal language requesting joint physical custody, equal decision-making rights, and a fair division of parental responsibilities. Kellen read it twice, then called the lawyer he'd consulted the day after Loretta's visit. "They're moving fast," Attorney Daniels observed. "But we expected this. Did you gather the documentation I asked for? Bank records, text messages, everything I could find." Kellen had spent hours combing through digital records, printing emails, and organizing evidence of Monica's abandonment. And the recording? Kellen hesitated. "I haven't listened to it yet." The recording in question was from their home security system, a camera Kellen had installed in the living room after a break-in 2 years earlier. It had captured Monica's phone conversations with Remy and Loretta in the weeks before she left. Kellen hadn't been able to bring himself to watch the footage, knowing it would only deepen the wound. "You need to review it," Daniels advised. "We need to know exactly what she said about Breyer, about the money. Judges take child abandonment very seriously, but financial exploitation even more so." That night, after Breyer was asleep, Kellen sat at his laptop with a tumbler of whiskey and played the first recording. The camera's view encompassed most of the living room, including the couch where Monica sat, phone to her ear. "He's obsessed with the surgery," she was saying, her voice low but clear. "It's all he talks about, all he thinks about. Like Breyer's just a problem to be fixed." A pause as she listened to whoever was on the other, and Loretta, "Probably. Of course I care about Breyer getting better. But what if he doesn't? What if we spend every penny we have, and he's still—" She trailed off. "I can't live like this forever, waiting for the other shoe to drop." Kellen fast-forwarded through several similar conversations, his stomach turning as Monica systematically dismantled their life to someone who encouraged her darkest thoughts. Then he found at the conversation that changed everything. "Remy says we could leave next week," Monica was saying, excitement in her voice. "He found this amazing apartment in Montmartre. It's like something from a movie." Another pause. I know, but the money's just sitting there." Kellen's so careful with it, adding a little each month like some kind of squirrel. Meanwhile, Remy says his friend doubled his investment in 3 months. Her voice grew defensive. "It's not stealing if I'm going to pay it back with interest. Breyer's surgery isn't even scheduled yet." Kellen paused the video while rising in his throat. Not stealing? Their son's life wasn't worth waiting for a return on investment. He forced himself to continue watching. What he saw next would become the centerpiece of his custody defense. Monica laughing as she described Breyer's condition to Remy. "It's not that serious," she was saying. "The doctors are always worst-case scenario this, emergency that. He's been dying for 4 years according to them, and he's still here. Kids heal fast. By the time we get back, he'll probably have outgrown half the issues anyway." Outgrown a congenital heart defect? The medical ignorance was staggering, especially from a nurse. But it was the dismissive tone, the air quotes around dying, that shattered any lingering doubt in Kellen's mind. This wasn't a mother temporarily broken by stress and worry. This was someone willing to gamble with her child's life for a Parisian romance. Kellen saved the most damning clips and forwarded them to Attorney Daniels. Then he poured another whiskey and tried to reconcile the woman in the videos with the mother who now brought Breyer gifts and helped with his homework 3 times a week. The next day, Monica arrived for her usual visit, unaware that Kellen had seen the footage. She greeted Breyer with her typical enthusiasm, presented him with a new book about hummingbirds, and settled in to help him with an art project for school. Kellen watched from the kitchen, seeing her through new eyes. The gentle way she helped Breyer hold the scissors. The patience as she explained how to make a proper fold. The genuine delight in his clumsy attempts at origami. Was this the same woman who had dismissed his condition so callously? Who had stolen his future for a fantasy? Or was this performance an act designed to convince a judge she was a devoted mother who had made one terrible mistake? "I need to speak with you," he said when Breyer went to wash paint off his hands. In private. Monica followed him to the small balcony off the kitchen. "Is something wrong? Breyer seems well today. I received a letter from your attorney." Kellen kept his voice neutral. "You're suing for joint custody?" Monica's expression hardened slightly. "I prefer to think of it as formalizing our arrangement." You made it clear you won't consider letting me back into Briar's life fully without a court order. You abandoned him, Kellen reminded her. You stole his surgery money. You left without saying goodbye. And now you think you deserve equal custody. I made a terrible mistake, Monica acknowledged. One I will regret for the rest of my life. But I'm still his mother. I have rights. Rights? Kellen laughed without humor. You forfeited those rights when you chose Paris over his heart surgery. I've changed, Monica insisted. The woman who did that wasn't me. Not the real me. I was in a dark place, making decisions out of desperation and fear. Save it for the judge. Kellen turned to go back inside. For what it's worth, I wasn't going to fight you on visitation. I was going to let you be part of his life in a limited way. But if you push this, if you try to take him from me even part-time, I'll fight you with everything I have. I don't want to take him from you. Monica's voice rose in frustration. I want us to co-parent. I want him to have both his parents in both his homes. He has a home, Kellen said firmly. Here, with me, the parent who stayed. Before Monica could respond, Briar returned, hands clean and eager to continue their project. The conversation ended, but the battle lines had been drawn. 2 weeks later, they faced each other across a courtroom. Monica wore a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, the picture of contrition and maternal devotion. Kellen wore the only suit he owned, purchased years ago for a friend's wedding. Beside him sat attorney Daniels. Beside her, a polished lawyer from a firm Kellen couldn't begin to afford. Your Honor, Monica's attorney began, my client made a serious error in judgment during a period of extreme emotional distress. She has shown nothing but remorse since her return and has been a consistent, positive presence in her son's life for the past 3 months. We're asking the court to recognize her parental rights and grant joint physical custody with equal decision-making authority for both parents. Judge Levine, a stern woman in her 60s, studied Monica over her reading glasses. Ms. Royce, you left the country while your minor child was awaiting heart surgery, correct? Yes, Your Honor. Monica's voice was quiet but steady. I was suffering from what my therapist has since diagnosed as caregiver burnout and situational depression. I made a catastrophic mistake that I'm working every day to rectify. And the funds you transferred, those were specifically saved for your son's medical procedure. Yes, Your Honor. Monica hesitated. I believed, incorrectly, that I could invest the money and return with more than enough for his surgery. I was misled by someone I trusted. Investment fraud is a separate issue, Judge Levine noted. We're here to determine what's in the best interest of the child. When it was Kellen's turn, Attorney Daniels presented the evidence they'd gathered, bank records showing the transfer, text messages between Monica and Remy planning their departure, and, most damning of all, the security footage. That's the recording played in the courtroom, Monica's voice dismissing Briar's condition, laughing about doctors' worst-case scenarios, insisting that kids heal fast. Monica's face drained of color. She whispered frantically to her attorney, who looked increasingly concerned. Your Honor, Daniels concluded, Ms. Royce abandoned her medically fragile child, stole funds specifically designated for life-saving surgery, and displayed a callous disregard for her son's condition. Mr. Royce has been the stable, constant presence in Briar's life. He arranged alternative funding for the surgery, cared for their son through recovery, and has maintained a home and business despite Ms. Royce's actions. We ask the court to grant Mr. Royce sole legal and physical custody, with supervised visitation for Ms. Royce at Mr. Royce's discretion. Judge Levine studied both parents before speaking. This court takes a dim view of parental abandonment under any circumstances. When that abandonment includes financial exploitation that directly endangered a child's life, it becomes exceptionally serious. She turned to Monica. Ms. Royce, your credentials as a nurse make your dismissal of your son's medical condition particularly troubling. You knew better, yet chose to prioritize a relationship with. She glanced at her notes, an Instagram travel influencer, over your son's health. Your Honor, please, Monica began, tears streaming down her face. I've changed. I'm in therapy. I'm rebuilding my life around Briar. Actions have consequences, Ms. Royce. Judge Levine's voice was firm but not unkind. Based on the evidence presented, this court grants sole legal and physical custody to Kellen Royce, with Ms. Royce allowed supervised visitation twice weekly, to be arranged and overseen by a court-appointed supervisor, not family members or friends. Monica collapsed in her seat, face in her hands. Her attorney placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, already preparing for an appeal. Kellen felt no triumph, only relief and a bone-deep exhaustion. The victory was hollow, necessary to protect Breyer, but painful nonetheless. No child should have to learn that a court deemed one parent unfit to care for them. Outside the courtroom, Monica caught up to him as he was leaving. "This isn't over," she said, her voice ragged from crying. "I'll appeal. I'll keep fighting until I have my son back." "He was never gone," Kellen replied quietly. "You were. I made one mistake." "No." Kellen faced her fully. "A mistake is forgetting to pick him up from school or missing a doctor's appointment. What you did was a choice, a series of choices made day after day that culminated in abandonment and theft. So you'll never forgive me? Never let me be his mother again? You'll always be his mother, Monica. Nothing can change that." Kellen softened slightly. "And he needs you in his life, but on terms that protect him from ever being hurt like that again." "Court-supervised visits twice a week is a joke," Monica spat. "He's my son." "Then prove it," Kellen challenged. "Not with gifts or tears or legal maneuvers. Prove it with consistency, with reliability, with putting his needs before your wants. In 6 months, we can revisit the arrangement if you've shown you can be trusted." He walked away before she could respond, heading to where Jessa waited with Breyer at her kindergarten classroom. Today was a half-day of school, and they planned a trip to the Science Museum to celebrate Breyer's latest clear cardiac checkup. Breyer would ask about the court appearance. He'd want to know if anything would change with his mom's visits. Kellen would have to find the right words to explain the judge's decision without demonizing Monica or giving Breyer false hope. But for now, watching his son's face light up as he spotted Kellen walking down the school hallway, he allowed himself to feel the first true peace he'd known in months. Breyer was safe legally and physically. His heart was healing. And somehow, despite everything, they'd found a way forward that a week after the custody hearing, Loretta showed up at the welding shop unannounced. Kellen was finishing a custom railing for a long-time client, sparks flying as he ground down rough edges. He didn't notice her until he shut off the grinder and lifted his face shield. "Jesus!" he exclaimed, startled to find her standing just outside the safety zone. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough to see you're still good at what you do." Loretta looked around the shop with grudging appreciation. "Place seems busier than last time I was here." Kellen set down his tools and removed his gloves. "If you're here about Monica's custody case, it's done. Judge ruled. End of story." Not end of story for Monica. "She's devastated, Kellen. Barely functioning." Loretta followed him to his office at the back of the shop. "She made a mistake." "Stop calling it a mistake," Kellen interrupted, his patience worn thin. "A mistake is accidental. What she did was deliberate." "Fine. She made a terrible decision in a moment of weakness and desperation." Loretta leaned against the doorframe. "But she's still Breyer's mother. She deserves another chance." The court disagreed. Kellen sat at his desk and began reviewing invoices, deliberately dismissive. "And I'm not overriding a judge's ruling because Monica's feelings are hurt. This isn't just about her feelings." Loretta's voice hardened. "This is about a boy who needs his mother. About a family that could heal if you just unbend your self-righteous neck a little." "Unbend my..." Kellen stopped, took a deep breath. "I'm not having this conversation again. Monica gets supervised visits twice a week. That's more than generous considering what she did. And if she cleaned up her act, if she proved she was stable, reliable, trustworthy, would you consider more then?" Kellen looked up, suspicious of the shift in tone. "Maybe, in time. But that would take months, if not years, of consistent effort. Not tears and promises." Loretta nodded, as if coming to a decision. She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. "Monica doesn't know I'm here. She'd kill me if she knew I was showing you this." "What is it?" "Something you need to see." She placed the flash drive on his desk. "It's from after she got back from Paris. She was staying with me, while looking for an apartment. I'm not interested in whatever sob story. Just watch it, Kellen. Loretta's voice was uncharacteristically serious. Then decide if you still think she deserves to be cut out of Briar's life. After she left, Kellen stared at the flash drive for a long time. Part of him wanted to throw it away unviewed. He'd seen enough of Monica's justifications and excuses in court, heard enough of her tearful apologies during visits with Briar. But another part, the part that had once loved her, had built a life with her, had created a child with her, needed to know what was on that drive. He plugged it into his laptop. A video file opened automatically, phone footage of Monica sitting on Loretta's couch, clearly unaware she was being recorded. Her hair was unwashed, her face tear-stained, her appearance a stark contrast to the put-together image she'd presented in court. "I can't believe he hates me this much," she was saying, her voice raw. "After everything we've been through together, he doesn't hate you." Loretta's voice came from behind the camera. "He's hurt, betrayed. You took Briar's surgery money and ran off with another man. What did you expect? I expected him to at least listen." Monica's voice rose. "To understand that I wasn't thinking clearly, that I believed Remy when he said we could double the money through his investments. But that's not why you left," Loretta challenged. "Be honest, at least with yourself. You didn't leave to make more money for Briar. You left because you wanted out." Monica's face crumpled. "I wanted a break. Just a few weeks away from the constant fear and worry. From watching Briar struggle to breathe. From Kellen's endless spreadsheets and savings plans." She wiped her eyes. "I never meant to stay away. I was coming back with Remy's investment returns that were going to fix everything." "But they never existed," Loretta noted. "No, none of it existed. The investments, the business connections, the future he promised." Monica laughed bitterly. The moment he had access to the money, he started changing, spending lavishly, making excuses about why the investments weren't happening yet. Then one morning, I woke up and he was gone, along with my passport, my phone, my credit cards. "So you came back because you had nowhere else to go?" Monica's head snapped up. "No, I came back because this is where I belong. Because I realized what I'd done, who I'd hurt. Because Briar is my son, and Kellen is—" She trailed off. "Was my husband." The vulnerability in her voice struck Kellen. This wasn't the polished, rehearsed contrition she'd shown in court. This was raw, unfiltered regret. "Do you still love him?" Loretta asked. "Of course I do." Monica stared at her hands. "I never stopped. Even when I was— God, I can't even say it out loud. Even when I was with Remy, I thought about Kellen. Compared them. Missed him. Then why? Because I was drowning." Monica's hands clenched into fists. "Every day watching my son's heart fail a little more. Every night listening to Kellen obsess over money and treatment options. Every moment terrified that today would be the day Briar's heart gave out." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just needed air. So you left them to suffocate alone." The accusation hung in the air. Monica didn't deny it. "Yes," she finally admitted. "And I'll hate myself for that until the day I die." The video continued, showing more of Monica's unvarnished grief and regret. Kellen watched as she described the moment she realized what she'd done, sitting alone in a Paris cafe after Remy disappeared, staring at her reflection in the window and not recognizing the woman looking back. "I betrayed everything I believed in," she said at one point. "Every value I held. Every promise I made. For what? For a fantasy that wasn't even real." By the time the video ended, Kellen sat in stunned silence. The raw honesty of what he'd witnessed Monica at her lowest, most vulnerable, most truthful had shaken something loose inside him. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding that he copied the video to his computer, then drove the flash drive to Jess's house. She needed to see this too, needed to help him process what it meant for their path forward. Jessa watched the video in silence, her expression shifting from skepticism to reluctant empathy. "She didn't know she was being recorded?" she asked when it ended. "Doesn't look like it." Kellen ran a hand through his hair. "Loretta said Monica would kill her if she knew she'd shown me this. It feels more genuine than anything she said in court or during visits," Jessa acknowledged. "But does it change anything? She still did what she did." No, it doesn't erase her actions. Kellen stared out Jess's kitchen window, watching the neighbor's cat stalk through the garden. But it helps me understand them. Not justify understand. So what now? You reconsider the custody arrangement? No. On this, Kellen was firm. The supervised visits stay, at least for now. But maybe... He hesitated. Maybe I stopped treating her like the enemy during those visits. Maybe I acknowledge that she's genuinely trying, instead of assuming it's all an act for the judge's benefit. Jessa studied him. Is that what you want? To find a way toward, if not forgiveness, then at least peace. I want what's best for Briar, Kellen said automatically, then amended. But yes, I'm tired of the anger. Tired of looking at her and seeing only betrayal. Briar loves her despite everything, and he deserves parents who can at least be civil to each other. Then tell her, Jessa suggested. Not about the video that would only create more conflict with Loretta, but tell her you're willing to work toward a better co-parenting relationship if she continues to prove herself reliable. The next day, when Monica arrived for a supervised visit with Briar, Kellen met her at the door instead of leaving before she arrived, as had become his habit. Can we talk? After you've spent time with Briar, he said, his tone deliberately neutral. Surprise and wariness crossed her face. Of course. The visit proceeded, as usual, Monica helping Briar with a school project, reading with him, listening to his excited descriptions of swimming class. The court-appointed supervisor, a retired social worker named Mrs. Brennan, observed from a discreet distance. When the visit ended, Kellen asked Mrs. Brennan if she could wait with Briar for a few minutes while he spoke privately with Monica. They stepped onto the balcony, the autumn air crisp between them. Is something wrong? Monica asked, clearly expecting bad news. No. Kellen leaned against the railing. I've been thinking about our situation, about what's best for Briar long-term. Monica tensed visibly. I'm not giving up on joint custody, if that's what this is about. It's not about the custody ruling. Kellen chose his words carefully. It's about how we move forward from here, how we co-parent, despite everything that's happened. I'm listening. You've been consistent with your visits. You haven't missed one, haven't been late, haven't upset Briar. Kellen acknowledged. That's a start. Hope flickered in Monica's eyes. I told you I've changed. I meant it. Words are easy. Consistency over time is hard. Kellen straightened. But if you maintain this path, if you continue to show up, follow through, put Briar first, then in time, we can discuss amending the visitation agreement. Maybe move toward unsupervised visits, eventually. Really? Monica's voice caught. You consider that? For Briar's sake, yes. Kellen met her gaze directly. He needs his mother. A reliable, trustworthy mother who won't disappear when things get hard. I will never leave him again, Monica promised, her eyes filling with tears. Never. I swear it on my life. Kellen nodded, accepting the promise for what it was sincere in this moment, but yet to be tested by time and circumstance. One day at a time, he said. That's all any of us can do. As Monica left, her step lighter than when she'd arrived, Kellen felt a weight lift from his own shoulders. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward whatever came next. 6 months after winning custody, Kellen stood in the empty welding shop, cardboard boxes stacked neatly against the walls. The equipment had been sold or moved to the new location, a larger building on the edge of town, with proper classrooms and workshop space, the Portland Veterans Fabrication School. His legacy, built from the ashes of near tragedy. The idea had come to him during a veteran support group meeting, where a former Marine was discussing the difficulty of finding meaningful work after service. Kellen had mentioned his welding business, and suddenly found himself surrounded by interested veterans who wanted to learn a trade. IT had started small, 1 or 2 vets coming to the shop after hours for informal lessons. Then word spread. A local news story featured his efforts. A small grant for a veterans organization followed. Before he knew it, Kellen was developing a curriculum and looking for larger space. The final piece fell into place when an anonymous donor whom Kellen strongly suspected was Pastor Will provided seed funding to purchase the new building. Now, 3 months after opening, the school had 24 students, a waiting list twice that long, and accreditation pending with the state vocational board. ready for the final walkthrough. Jessa appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. The new tenants want to make sure everything's up to code before they sign. Almost. Kellen ran his hand along the workbench where he'd taught Briar to make his first metal sculpture. Just saying goodbye. It's not really goodbye, Jessa reminded him. It's evolution. This place taught you welding. Now you're teaching others. Kellen nodded, appreciating her perspective as always. In the months since the custody battle, Jessa had become even more integral to their lives, not just Briar's caregiver and Kellen's friend, but something more. Something neither of them had put a name to yet, but that grew stronger each day. Did you finish the trust paperwork? She asked, checking something off her list. Signed yesterday. Kellen had established a legal trust for Briar, funded initially with the remaining donations from the GoFundMe campaign and a percentage of the welding school's profits. The trust would cover Briar's education, future medical needs, and provide a safety net when he reached adulthood, and it was explicitly protected from anyone, including Monica, attempting to access the funds for any purpose other than Briar's direct benefit. Monica's visitation went well yesterday. Jess's tone was carefully neutral. It did. Kellen moved to help her with the boxes. 4 months of consistent visits. No drama, no broken promises. Mrs. Brennan's recommended moving to unsupervised visits next month. And you're okay with that? Kellen considered the question. I think so. Briar certainly is. He misses having time alone with her. The journey toward a functional co-parenting relationship had been slow and often painful. Monica had maintained her weekly visits without fail, even when sick or overwhelmed with work. She'd attended every doctor's appointment, school event, and swim lesson she was permitted to join. She'd started therapy, both individual and a group, for parents of children with chronic conditions. Small steps, building toward something like trust. Not the blind trust of their marriage, but a cautious, earned trust rooted in Briar's well-being. The school looks amazing, by the way, Jessa said as they loaded boxes into Kellen's truck. That mural the students made for the entrance is incredible. Thanks for the design help, Kellen smiled. Your artistic eye saved us from a lot of well-intentioned but ugly choices. The mural depicted veterans transitioning from military service to civilian trades, with a central image of hands crafting metal into new forms. Beneath it, a simple dedication, in honor of Briar Royce, whose courage inspired this school. They drove to the new location, where final preparations were underway for the official grand opening ceremony the following weekend. Briar was with his swim coach, practicing for his first ever competition, something that would have been unthinkable before his surgery. Mr. Royce, one of the veteran students, waved as they entered. We finished the demonstration pieces for the open house. Want to see? The next hour passed in a blur of activity, approving projects, finalizing the event schedule, checking inventory in the supply room. Kellen moved through it all with a steady confidence that had grown alongside the school. This mission had given him purpose beyond Briar's medical needs. It had transformed his survival instinct into something that helped others survive, too. By the time they picked up Briar from swim practice, Kellen felt a contentment he hadn't expected to find again after Monica's betrayal. Not perfect happiness, he was too realistic for that, but a solid satisfaction with the life they'd rebuilt. Dad, Miss Jessa, I did a whole lap with butterfly stroke today. Briar bounced into the truck, his hair still damp. Coach says I could try in the meet next month if I keep practicing. That's fantastic, buddy. Kellen ruffled his son's hair. How's your energy level? Any tiredness? The question was automatic, a leftover from years of constant medical vigilance. But Briar's answer was different now. Nope, I could swim more if Coach let me. He buckled his seatbelt. Can we stop for ice cream? Please. Jessa laughed. I think that's a yes. At the ice cream shop, they ran into Pastor Will, who joined them at their table. Just the family I was hoping to see, he said, accepting the spoonful of chocolate ice cream Briar offered. I wanted to confirm you're all coming to the church picnic on Sunday. Wouldn't miss it, Kellen assured him. Briar's been talking about the three-legged race all week. Mom's coming too, Briar added. Dad said she could. Pastor Will's eyebrows rose slightly, but he smiled. That's wonderful. The more the merrier. Later, as they walked back to the truck, Jessa fell into step beside Kellen while Briar ran ahead. "You know what I realized today?" she said. "It's been a year since everything." Kellen nodded. A year since Monica left. A year since their world collapsed and rebuilt itself in a new form. "Hard to believe," he agreed. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like another lifetime. You've come so far." Jess's hand found his, a casual touch that had become increasingly common between them. "Both of you." Ahead, Briar was examining a ladybug that had landed on his arm, his face a picture of wonder. His cheeks were rosy with health, his movements energetic and fluid. The worry that had shadowed him even before his surgery, the unconscious awareness of his own fragility, had faded, replaced by childish confidence. "We couldn't have done it without you," Kellen said, squeezing her hand. "You know that, right?" Jessa smiled. "You have found a way. That's what you do. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to find out." He glanced at her. "Briar asked me something interesting last night." "Oh." He asked if you were going to be his new mom. Jessa stumbled slightly. "He what?" "Apparently one of his friends at school has a stepmom, and Briar wanted to know if that's what you were becoming." Kellen kept his tone casual, though his heart raced. "I told him that we're friends and that you're very important to both of us." "And what did he say to that?" Jessa's voice was carefully neutral. "He said he wouldn't mind if you were more than a friend." Kellen stopped walking, turning to face her. "Neither would I." The words hung between them, not quite a declaration, but more than a suggestion. Something that had been building for months, perhaps years, finally acknowledged. "Kellen," Jessa began, her eyes searching his face. "Are you sure? After everything with Monica, I wouldn't want to rush." "This isn't a reaction to Monica," he interrupted gently. "This is about you. About us. About the family we've already become without putting a name to it." Briar called from ahead, breaking the moment. "Dad! Miss Jessa! Look at all the ladybugs. We should—" Jessa gestured toward Briar. "Talk about this later," Kellen finished. "But we will talk about it." The smile that spread across Jessa's face was answer enough for now. That evening, after Briar was asleep, Kellen sat at his desk reviewing the final paperwork for the trust fund. The legal language was dense, but the purpose was clear: to secure Briar's future against any eventuality, including the potential return of the woman who had once threatened it. Not that Monica seemed likely to repeat her past mistakes. The supervised visits had gone well enough that the court had recently approved a gradual transition to normal visitation rights. She had repaid a small portion of the money she'd taken, making regular deposits into an account for Briar's college education. She attended therapy weekly and had even, on Briar's birthday, apologized to Kellen directly for the pain she'd caused. Not an empty apology designed to win him back, but a genuine acknowledgement of the damage she'd done. Progress, if not redemption. His phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "Briar left his science book in my apartment. Can I drop it by tomorrow morning before school?" Simple, practical co-parenting communication. No drama, no hidden agenda. Kellen texted back a brief, "Yes, thanks," and set his phone aside. They would never be friends. The betrayal cut too deep for that. But they had found a way to put Briar first, to set aside their personal feelings for the sake of the child they both loved. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional, a workable piece built from the ashes of what they'd once been. And that, Kellen decided as he signed the final page of the trust document, was enough. 18 months after Monica left for Paris, Kellen stood in the backyard of his new house, watching Briar race through the sprinkler with Jess's daughter, Emma. The summer heat shimmered above the grass, turning the water droplets into momentary rainbows as the children squealed with delight. "Mind if I join you?" Pastor Will stepped onto the patio, offering Kellen a cold drink. "Not at all." Kellen accepted the glass with a nod of thanks. "Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss Briar's birthday for the world." Pastor Will settled into a chair beside him. 8 years old. Remarkable. 8 years. Sometimes Kellen still marveled that they'd made it this far. When Briar was first diagnosed at age 3, doctors had been cautious about his prognosis. Now, post-surgery, his cardiologist used words like normal lifespan and minimal restrictions. "The school's doing well," Pastor Will observed. "I hear you've got a waiting list now. 26 veterans and growing." Kellen couldn't keep the pride from his voice. We're looking at expanding to a second location next year. From tragedy to triumph. Pastor will raise his glass in a small toast. The best kind of redemption story. Across the yard, Jessa emerged from the house, carrying a tray of snacks. Her 5-year-old daughter, Emma, abandoned the sprinkler to help, solemnly taking a bowl of chips as if it contained precious cargo. The two had moved in 3 months ago, after Kellen and Jess's quiet wedding at the church's ceremony focused on blending their families rather than traditional pageantry. Monica hadn't attended, but she'd helped Briar pick out a tie to wear and had taken both children for ice cream afterward. Another small step in their ongoing journey toward healthy co-parenting. Monica is running late. Jessa called to Kellen. She texted that there was an accident on the highway. She'll be here in about 20 minutes. Kellen nodded, unsurprised. Despite her efforts at reliability, Monica still struggled with punctuality. Small failings he could now accept with equanimity, knowing they weren't malicious or deliberate. How are things between you two? Pastor will ask quietly. Kellen considered the question. Respectful. Focused on Briar. She hasn't missed a visitation in over a year, and she's good with him. He shrugged. That's all I can ask for. The doorbell rang, and Jessa went to answer it. She returned moments later with Monica, who carried a brightly wrapped gift and looked uncertain. Sorry I'm late, she said, approaching Kellen and Pastor Will. Traffic was terrible. No problem, Kellen replied easily. Kids are just cooling off in the sprinkler before cake. An awkward pause followed, the kind that still sometimes appeared in their interactions despite months of careful navigation. The veteran school looks amazing, Monica offered. I drove by the new location last week. The sign looks great. Thanks. Kellen nodded. First graduating class finishes next month. Another pause, less strained than the first. I'll go say hi to Briar, Monica said finally, moving toward the children. Pastor will watch her go, then turn to Kellen. You've both come a long way. We had to, Kellen replied simply. For him. The afternoon unfolded peacefully, cake and presents, games in the yard, the easy chatter of the small group they'd invited to celebrate. Kellen moved between conversations, always keeping one eye on Briar, the habit of vigilance not entirely erased by medical reassurances. At one point, he found himself alone in the kitchen with Monica, who was helping clean up wrapping paper. Thank you for including me, she said quietly. I know you don't have to. You're his mother, Kellen replied. That hasn't changed. Monica nodded, her eyes on the colorful paper in her hands. I saw the trust fund documentation. It's a good idea. Very thorough. He'll be taken care of, no matter what happens. Kellen's tone held no accusation, just statement of fact. I know. Monica looked up at him. You've always been the one to make sure of that. Outside, Briar's laughter rang out, followed by Emma's higher-pitched giggle. Kellen and Monica both turned toward the sound, drawn by the joy in it. He's happy, Monica observed. Healthy. That's what matters. Yes, Kellen agreed. It is. Another moment of understanding passed between them, not friendship, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement of the truth they now shared. Their marriage was ashes. Their romantic relationship was dead. But from that destruction had risen something new, a different kind of family, rebuilt around the needs of a child who deserved nothing less than their best efforts. Later, as the party wound down, Kellen found Jessa sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset. He joined her, their shoulders touching comfortably. Good day, she said, leaning into him slightly. The best. He slipped his arm around her. Briar looked really happy. He is happy. Jessa smiled. We all are. Across the yard, Monica was saying goodbye to Briar, kneeling to his level for a final hug before she left. Their son's arms wrapped tightly around her neck, his expression one of uncomplicated love. Whatever Monica had done, whatever pain she had caused, Briar had found his way to forgiveness. Children's hearts were resilient that way. Adult hearts, Kellen's heart, took longer to heal. Some never did completely. But he had found a different kind of wholeness in the life they'd built from the wreckage of what came before. The welding school, thriving and growing. The new house, filled with laughter. Jessa and Emma, bringing joy he'd thought lost forever. And Briar, healthy and strong, The miracle at the center of it all. As Monica walked her car, she paused, looking back at the scene on the porch. Kellen and Jess on the swing, Briar and Emma now playing a quiet game on the steps. Her expression was complex regret, acceptance, a touch of wistfulness. Then she raised her hand in a small wave and continued to her car. Kellen returned the gesture, neither warm nor cold. A simple acknowledgement of their shared past and separate futures. "Dad, Miss Jessa, look what I can do," Briar called, attempting a handstand that quickly collapsed into giggles. "Amazing," Kellen applauded. "Try again." As Briar righted himself for another attempt, Kellen thought about the journey that had brought them here, the fear and rage that had nearly consumed him, the community that had lifted them up when they couldn't stand alone, the unexpected joy found in the aftermath of betrayal. Some hearts healed slow, some didn't at all, and some, they turned to iron not brittle and cold, but strong and enduring, tempered by fire into something that could never be broken again.